So hello, I'm Paul.
And I'm Beth.
And we've been married for 19 years.
Right. We had a long distance relationship through college. It was back in the day, we didn't have email, so it was phone relationship. And we got married the very weekend after we graduated from college. So our experience together, when we were together on the weekend, every once in a while, because we were in different states, Paul was in Missouri, I was in Austin, was heightened with us just all over each other. It was great. And we both, I think, expected marriage to be great.
We really came to our marriage with, we didn't realize some different expectations around the area of intimacy. And we have really, throughout our marriage, had a lot of struggles in this area of intimacy. And so we thought we would like to share those, hopefully for somebody else who's having struggles, knowing that you're not alone and that it can be a hard fight, but it's a great fight and much worth a journey to go on. So as Beth said, we got married right after we both graduated, after being together all weekends. Getting married, I assumed every night when you went to bed, we'd have sex. And well, we'd wake up in the morning and we'd be naked, so it only made sense we would have sex. And then I'd always heard you were supposed to have spontaneity and variety in relationships, so sometime during the week, at least once or twice, we'd have to sneak in some spontaneity into the situation. So I would understand if we missed maybe one morning or one night, but fairly regularly I was expecting intimacy.
So
you mean sex?
Sex.
So yes, you can imagine keeping up with that pace over any period of time. We're looking at 21 times a week as his expectations. It got to where there were times where I was just exhausted, and I remember pleading with Paul, how about quantity over quantity. Better quality, less frequent would be much better for me. And so if I ever turned Paul down and said, "Not tonight, honey," for me it was as shallow as "Not tonight, honey. I adore you, I'm in love with you, just let's wait till tomorrow." I think Paul heard that completely differently. And
yeah, I heard it a whole lot differently. I understood, I thought, the quantity and quality thing. So, if we missed a night, that was a-okay. But the next night, I was expecting something. And when Beth turned me down, it hurt. I mean, she would say, I don't want to. And to me, that really felt like, Paul, I don't love you. And I'd ask her, well, do you love me? Well, yes, I just don't want to. I'd be like, well, I love you. I want to have sex with you. You don't want to have sex with me. You don't love me. That's what it meant to me, and it would hurt. I would have this hole in my chest.
And to me, I thought, he's being dramatic. How can he possibly think I don't love him because I don't want to have sex tonight? He is not only being dramatic, but I thought he was trying to manipulate me by pretending like he was oh so hurt. And so I grew resentful, thinking he was trying to be manipulative and faking this horrible hurt, and it really made me mad, which made me pull away more.
So we're close to a year into our relationship, and we hit this cycle fairly regularly, about every other month. We end up hurting one another and not knowing, not understanding, very frustrated. And her parents invited us to go on this thing called a marriage enrichment weekend. It was going to be at a hotel. I thought, I have to spend the weekend with your parents, but if they're going to pay for it, we had just got out of college. We were pretty dirt poor. I was all for a weekend at a hotel, even if I had to spend it for it with her parents.
But yeah, so the negative cycle we would get in periodically prior to going to this conference is basically I would turn Paul down. He would be completely hurt, feel rejected, and he would pull away from me emotionally during the day. He would avoid me. He'd keep at an arm's distance. And for me, I need to feel connected emotionally to be in the mood for sex. So if I feel like he's not my friend and not on my team and we're not best friends, it's hard for me to get excited about sex. And in fact, the more distant he is emotionally, the less I want sex. And so we get in this spiral.
And because I was hurt and I knew if I approached Beth and I got rejected, the hurt would be even more, I put a barrier where I couldn't be that warm, fun-loving guy that she wanted to make love to. Instead, I was this kind of hard, cold guy, so it just spiraled. It would spiral down. But
So let's go back to the Marriage Enrichment Conference. Our very first conference we went to, only because my parents paid for it. It was a free ticket and a free night in a hotel.
So it was kind of funny. We got the program for the thing, and I think I actually got it, and I looked at it, and I went down.
You have to choose classes.
Yeah. When you go to one of these conferences, just like a conference for anything else, you have to pick what sessions you're going to go to, and they had different sessions, and you had to pick out of one of 3 or 4. You know, one block, if there was an intimacy or a sexuality, hot marriage, and I kind of circled that one, and I kind of slid it in front of Beth, and I said, hey, I looked at this. What do you think about going to these sessions when we get to this conference?
And I just looked at it and said, that'll work.
No discussion of the topics, no agreement that we needed to work on it. We just kind of went. We didn't talk about it going to the event. When the hour before the session got here, it was nice and quiet. We went into the session, and our first ahas, oh my goodness, there's like 10 other couples in this session. We're not the only couples having this issue.
I think it was a big relief to see, oh my goodness, we're normal. We're not the only weirdos out there that can't seem to be in sync sexually. And the other big takeaway, a lot of the couples in this session were married 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, a good bit longer than us, and they were still struggling with pieces of their sexuality. So that let me know right then that there's no quick fix. If it was so easy and magical to fix this, these other couples wouldn't be here because they've been coming to Marriage Enrichment for many years.
So the course of this hour-and-a-half workshop, the couples kind of open up, they share different things. We were amazed at the types of issues. We knew that this would always be a challenge. They mentioned a book, A Joyful Meeting, at that meeting. So we went out right to the book table, bought this book, and on the car ride home, we read that book out loud to one another.
We did, and I remember reading in that book, you know, about how a man really ties his whole identity and masculinity to his sexuality, and there were enough people that felt the way Paul says he felt when I turned him down, that it gave validity to what he was saying, that wow, he really truly might think I don't love him over not wanting to have sex one night, and it's not just him manipulating me.
And I flipped the page and I was reading, I was like, oh my goodness, Beth, there's enough women out there like you that don't want to have sex all the time. They actually wrote it down in this book. I couldn't believe that it was just normal. And they had our whole little negative spiral drawn out in the book. It was like, wow, we were normal. So we knew we weren't the only people. We were normal. But that didn't help us a whole lot fixing our problem. We could communicate it, but sure enough, every 3 months, maybe every 6 months now, we would get back into this downward spiral.
Right. This book did give us the vocabulary to sort of start talking about our sexuality, but it didn't prevent some of the hurt that was going on. And I know at some point I sensed a lot of anger from Paul if we started getting into this cycle. And the anger was actually scary to me. I didn't feel secure, you know, with him being so angry. And honestly, the anger was a turnoff. I just found it really difficult to be sexually attracted to an angry man that was angrily demanding sex because he was so mad, you know. And so I felt like I was put in this position to lose my dignity and go through the motions anyway, or to stand my ground. And again, it was real hard. I knew it was hard to reject him, but at the same time, it was so hard to let myself be with him willingly when I sensed the anger.
And it would be hard for me because I would know I was in the mood, and I would try to make everything right. You know, I'd wash the car, I'd do the dishes, I'd make sure everything was done. And you know, right before we went to bed, her sister would call, and that would be that night gone. And then the next night, I'd put a whole lot of effort into it, and the kid would get sick, and that would ruin it. And so by the third day, I am just pin up, frustrated, and the thought that something might happen that night would build up, and she would sense that. I would sense that there's just so much tension, and it'd just be a lack of security, and I could just sense the tension. And so before we even got to bed and he asked for sex that night, there was just already a wall between us. I did try at some point. I thought, let me take this into my own hands, and I'm going to decide. I decided I was going to be the dutiful wife that never ever turned down her husband. I thought maybe that'll fix this, whether I'm in the mood or not. I'm just going to do this, and that's a lot better than the repercussions of his pulling away emotionally from me because he's mad. So I did. Went through the motions, and I have to say it didn't solve anything because
Paul could tell I wasn't there. He could tell it was more, it just was not fulfilling to him.
We were having sex regularly, but I had a certain desire to be wanted by Beth. I wanted her to want to have sex. And I could tell she wasn't wanting to have sex. And I had a certain picture of what good sex would look like. And we were one day on a bike ride away. We had an extended period of time, and I decided I wanted to broach the subject of, I know we've been messing around, but I want more from this relationship. I want this. I mean, I described it. We went on vacation once and we did this. I thought that was great. And I was shocked.
That I said, that memory that you're bringing up, that was not good for me. In fact, I felt very uncomfortable, and I felt cheap, and that's not a positive memory for me.
And that hurt me when she said she felt cheap. Gosh, I wanted our sexuality to be this wonderful thing about a relationship, and that I did something to make her feel cheap, to know this was an area that she was vulnerable in, and I did something to make her more vulnerable. It just hurt deep down. So for a long time, well, not a long time, right after that, I decided, well, I am never going to approach her again. I mean, I don't want to ever cause that pain, so I backed off. Now the problem, though, for me, or do you want to share about, how you felt when I backed off? Because I didn't back off just sexually. I backed off emotionally, too.
Right. There was an avoidance there. If he was going to protect himself from the rejection of any kind of sexuality, or just from that, he had to cut me off completely. So if we weren't going to be together sexually, we couldn't be together emotionally. Our friendship suffered. He kept a distance from me. He was just more serious and stern, and kind of avoided me. There were times when you avoided being around me.
It's almost, I didn't want to build into that friendship part of the relationship, because if we started laughing, we started giggling, I knew I would be interested in you sexually, and I knew I would want to approach you sexually, and I knew if I did and I got rejected, it would hurt, or it would hurt you. So I did kind of remove myself emotionally from the relationship completely, which so that didn't work.
Right. And another part of this is, it sounds like I was unwilling but going through the motions, or willing but not really into it. There were times that it was fine for me, that we had sex and it was completely fine. But Paul wanted more, and I felt like if I wasn't swinging from the chandeliers, ecstatic, over the top, crazy sex, it was never going to be good enough for him. And so that made me feel bad about myself. It made me not feel safe or comfortable and not accepted for who I was as his partner.
And so this all occurred over a course of probably, I would say, 7 or 8 years. We went on this journey up and down. And during that 7 or 8 year period, the initial conference we went to, we started going to those every year. We would take different workshops about unresolvable issues and communication, and each time we would get better, but it still wouldn't solve the problem. And we would get in this argument, and each time the hurt got more intense and more intense. And finally we were just like, we can't solve this. So, we went off. We've always told people, go talk to a counselor. Don't wait until it's too late and you're getting divorced. Go with that. Well, maybe we should take our own advice. So we went and we talked to a counselor, had a meeting. He was like, great, Beth, you can go. Paul, you stick around for a while. And so I had a couple more meetings with him. A couple ahas. First of all, he talked about me defining Beth's enjoyment. So for me, intimacy, sex, orgasm, all go hand in hand. If I had a good time, if I haven't had an orgasm, I didn't have a good time. So I assumed for Beth to have had a good time having sex, I wanted her to have an orgasm, and that became my goal. I was going to make sure Beth had a good time, and I would know that by making her have an orgasm.
Every time. And for me, I could very much and do very much enjoy being with Paul sexually, and it doesn't necessarily lead to orgasm every time. There are times when it's just so comfortable and feels so safe and secure, but it doesn't mean for me that it has to be wild, crazy, and passionate. Sometimes it's not that, but it's still wonderful and enjoyable to me nonetheless.
So through the first thing I learned through those talks is I had to let Beth free her up to enjoy it the way she wanted to enjoy it. It was very different. We all enjoy it differently. I enjoyed it one way, but for Beth, and that freeing you up to enjoy it
made a huge
your way.
Difference. Instead of feeling like sex was being demanded of me in a certain angry way, all of a sudden I felt free to be me and be okay being myself and be accepted for whatever gift I could give in that area. And so that made a huge difference for me.
And then the other thing, I knew I followed a stereotypical, or we followed a stereotypical male-female pattern in this way. But my heart was, I sensed a little bit deeper than your average. And my other big ahas when we were going through this, we looked a little bit into my past. And because we're putting this out there for the world, I won't go into the details of that part of it, but I did discover that I had some extra insecurities in my relationship, in that if we weren't physically close, I had an inner fear that our relationship wasn't well. So the physical closeness in our relationship, if it was ever absent, there was an inner subconscious part of me that created a greater fear, I think, than your average person. And once I came to that awareness, you know, things seemed to get better. And so that was probably 3-4 years ago.
About 4 years.
So now here we are, 19 years in our relationship. First 15, very hard. Very issue that constantly popped up. Now we are 4 years past. I think, like everybody, we have ups and downs in our intimate relationship and our sexuality.
But the downs aren't nearly as low as they ever used to be. It's like the floor's been raised.
Yeah. It used to get a little lower each time, a little more hurt, a little more pain, and we were almost ready to give up on it. But now we've definitely raised that floor up a lot, so we cycle up and down, but at a very healthy level, a very normal level, and we know how to deal with it. We know how to communicate. We know how to tell one another in advance when something's going on. It's great, to the point that we can sit here now and share it with you. If this is an area that you struggle with,
don't give up.
Don't give up. Keep it strong. Go talk to somebody. Look up local marriage conferences. They're wonderful. Guys, I know you don't want to do it. It sounds weird. It's the best thing you'll do. I guarantee you'll have fun that weekend. You'll score.
I have to say to you, I'm so happy to be on this journey with you, and I'm just so happy and proud about how far we've come, and you mean the world, and it's been wonderful.
I've enjoyed it, and the fact that we've made it past this, I feel like we can conquer anything, and I'm happy we fought the hard fight and had the hard times, because I think we're stronger now because of it. I love you.